Number 10. Mr. Bloom. The concept of darkness is one that is intrinsically tied to Batman. I mean, everyone should come to expect it from a character referred to as the Dark Knight. So it only makes sense to put the character up against the opposite of darkness, light, and that is where Mr. Bloom comes to play. His past, as well as his motives, remain a mystery to this day, but in no way does that mean he didn't leave a huge impact on Gotham City. With the ability to bestow powers onto any other human being at the cost of shortening that individual's life, Mr. Bloom provided these quote-unquote seeds to a select few, and crime blossomed and grew like a weed from the lowest reaches of Gotham City. Not only could he bestow powers onto others through his seeds though, he also had some powers of his own, including mechakinesis, pyrokinesis, cryokinesis, science alteration, and of course, superhuman strength and agility. Check him out for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 2015's Batman Volume 2, all the way until his death in 2016's Batman Volume 2, number 50. Number 9. Black Spider. When Eric Needham was a young lad, he unfortunately became addicted to drugs and turned to a life of crime in order to fuel that addiction. He raided and robbed his father's liquor store and actually killed his old man in the process, which landed him in jail where he kicked that nasty drug habit and took up a life of fighting the war on drugs. Donning a costume, he became a self-styled vigilante and began killing those suspected of dealing any sort of drugs. Now in his mind, Batman and him had a common enemy and they should have been allies, but the Dark Knight thought differently due to Needham's tendency to, you know, kill. Batman interfered with his plans many times, and that led to Needham turning to a life of crime instead, teaming up with some of the other villains in order to get revenge on Batman. During his crusade, Needham's wife and son were killed by a drug lord who had discovered the Black Spider's identity, and in a rage, the Spider prepared for one final assault. After being shot multiple times, Needham invaded the drug lord's headquarters and detonated explosives strapped to his back, killing the drug dealers in the process. Give his story a read for yourself, starting with 1976's Detective Comics number 463. Number 8. The Black and White Bandit. Once a successful artist, Roscoe Chiara was commissioned to paint a portrait of Winsor Munzell, the head of a chemical corporation. His company had created some new pigments specifically for painting, however, Chiara did not know that the paints were untested, and began to have these serious headaches. On the final end of painting, Chiara fell asleep and awoke to a colorless sunrise, because he had gone completely colorblind as a result of the pigments. To get his revenge, he became the Black and White Bandit and began a campaign against Munsell, stealing various pieces of art from his collection and his museum. He doesn't have any powers per se, but he is a master of disguise as he has been seen as a blind man and a nun, and he is also a getaway master thanks to his zebra. It didn't take long for Batman to catch wind of what was going on, and after 2 encounters, he defeated the Black and White Bandit with only a false advertisement and just a punch to the nose. He hasn't really been seen since, but it's presumed that he is reformed or he's either still in jail. We're not 100% sure. Check him out in 2001's Batman Gotham Knights, number 12. Number 7. Amygdala. Prone to fits of homicidal rage, Aaron Helsinger was put in the care of Arkham Asylum and had his amygdala cluster removed, in hopes of curing his psychotic episodes. It actually ended up doing the exact opposite though, and Aaron became even more angry than before. During his time at Arkham, Aaron became a pawn of Jeremiah Arkham and was used to attack Batman many times to try and break his spirits, but you know, it's Batman, so that didn't really happen. A short time later, Bane orchestrated a massive breakout at Arkham Asylum, and all of the patients, including Amygdala, were freed, and he teamed up with the Ventriloquist to wreak some havoc on Gotham City. It didn't take long for Batman to take down Amygdala and arrest him, sending him to Blackgate Penitentiary, where he became the star member of the prison softball team. He was eventually released and actually lived in the same apartment building as Dick Grayson for a while, all until Blockbuster blew up the entire apartment complex. Check out Amygdala for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1992's Batman Shadow of the Bat, number 3. Number 6. Merrymaker. Dr. Byron Meredith was a crazed doctor that worked at Arkham Asylum who used pretty interesting methods to treat and rehabilitate his patients, his favorite being torture. Byron was one of the few doctors who could actually tolerate the Joker, and he ended up becoming obsessed with him and just studied him endlessly until he was fired and went into a solo practice. Eventually creating the costume for the Merrymaker, Meredith created that role so that he could lead his 4 new Joker-obsessed patients into a life of crime. Meredith's plan was to create this uncanny society so that the 4 would do his bidding. While the Joker-themed criminals attacked civilians, Meredith would sneak into a nearby building where one of his enemies, either his ex-wife, her lawyer, etc. would be, and this way he could easily perform a kill, while the members of the League of Smiles would attract Batman and the GCPD's attention. Check the Merrymaker and the League of Smiles out for yourself in 2013's Detective Comics Volume 2, number 16. Number 5. Zombie. Best known as an associate of Bane, Zombie was actually a pretty big reason behind Bane being able to become one of Gotham's best known criminals. He was once an assistant at the medical medical facility that gave Bane his abilities, and he then aided Bane in escaping prison, and was the one who found a way for Bane to get his daily dose of venom. Shortly after Bird's encounter with Batman, Bane defeated the Dark Knight and his rise to power started. Bird, Trog, and Zombie started a rampage over the city to eliminate competition and recruit more members to Bane's crime empire, as they were commanded by their boss, of course. Bird, Trog, and Zombie were sent by Bane to verify the supposed threat of a new Batman, and the three of them were brutally defeated by the new Dark Knight. They were arrested and locked away by the police, and each of them were interrogated about Bane's activities, but none of them revealed anything because they are good henchmen. They did eventually break out of prison, but it didn't take too long for them to end up back there. Check out Zombie in his first appearance in 1993's Batman Vengeance of Bane, number 1. Number 4, Mr. Camera. Called Mr. Camera for obvious reasons, because of the camera lens helmet he used to wear on his crimes, and also because he employed all sorts of photographic devices on his criminal raids. Used to record his crimes, and on one very special day, he actually managed to get some footage of Batman and Robin in their secret identities. Although he was captured that same day because, Batman and Robin really didn't want that information to get out, he did manage to hide the tape, hoping to use it eventually against the dynamic duo. Not too long after, Batman and Robin found the tape and discovered that the footage was actually too obscure to even see anything, which meant that their secret had never actually been exposed and that they had nothing to worry about at all. This particular version of Mr. Camera was unfortunately erased from the DC Comics history after Crisis on Infinite Earths, but there have been some one-off appearances in recent years of this character. Check him out for yourselves, starting with 1954's Batman number 81. Number 3, Lockup. Lyle Bolton, aka Lockup, is another non-powered villain who specialized in incarceration, high-tech security weapons, and escapology. He was first seen capturing the criminals Charaxus and Maxwell Veazey, but decided that these minor villains were too easy for him, and went for the big guns in the form of Two-Face, who he successfully captured and took back to his private prison. He is eventually stopped by the police while targeting a criminal turned state evidence, and is revealed to be Lyle Bolton, who was previously discharged from the police academy for being too gung-ho and dismissed from several security jobs. Later during the events of No Man's Land, having taken control of Blackgate Prison in the aftermath of the Cataclysm. He enlisted the KG Beast and the Trigger Twins to act as the wardens for his prison and ruled with an iron fist, but Batman tolerated his presence because he required Lockup to keep captured criminals in check to prevent Gotham from being overrun with them. Lockup was kept under strict orders to treat the prisoners well, and then towards the end of the event, Batman enlisted Nightwing's help to overthrow Lockup so Blackgate could be used by the lawful authorities once again. Check him out in his first appearance in 1996's Robin Volume 2, number 24. Number 2, Johnny Stitches. A Gotham City underboss for the Intergang, Johnny Donetto worked for Tobias Wales until he was caught stealing from him and was subjected to some pretty serious torture and mutilation, and just straight up thrown out of a window to die in an alley. Thankfully, he was found by Bruno Mannheim, who thought that Johnny had some potential, and he had Desaad fix him and stitch him up as best he could. Now operating under the name Johnny Stitches, he worked aggressively to remove the remaining large criminals in Gotham after the deportations of all supervillains from Earth. With his newfound power over people, Stitches used the Iceberg Lounge as a meeting place for Intergang and would eventually cause Penguin some pretty big trouble with the various vigilantes of the city. After Batman's sudden disappearance, Stitches organized a wager in Intergang's HQ, but they were interrupted by Vigilante, who broke into the place and challenged Stitches with the intention of killing him. Arming himself with a knife, Stitches was about to start his attack, but Vigilante was suddenly attacked by an invisible person that pushed him out of the building. Check him out in 2008's Gotham Underground, number 3. Number 1, Film Freak II. Known only as Edison, this man is the second Film Freak, a disturbed cinephile who had a strange obsession with Catwoman, and ran a late-night WUAB TV Studios operated show displaying amateur film clips made by his underlings. After obtaining footage from one of his henchmen showing Selina Kyle and Harley both wearing their Catwoman suits, he poisoned his goons, citing Alfred Hitchcock's suspicion, in order to not let him divulge the information. He later deduced the real Catwoman, Selina, was hiding in Gotham City under the pseudonym of Irina Dubrovna, the main character of Val Lewton's 1942 film Cat People. He, along with Angleman, broke into Selina's apartment and threatened her infant daughter Helena. Eventually, due to Film Freak's obsession with shots and filming, she was able to incapacitate both of them, thankfully. She also asked her friend Zatanna to wipe her identity from their minds, similar to what she had done earlier with Dr. Light, and made them confess to their crimes to the authorities. Fast forward a bit, and in his final act of villainy, we see him manage to get his hands on an atom bomb, paying homage to Stanley Kubrick's Dr. Strangelove, and while citing Network, announced on live TV that all Gothamites would have had their lives saved if they were able to solve a film-themed riddle. However, after shooting a movie critic that he employed to deliver the uranium for the bomb, Film Freak was finally defeated by Catwoman, who also managed to defuse the bomb. Number 10, Sportsmaster. Starting off with a pretty vanilla villain, Lawrence Crusher Croc was a very competitive sportsman who excelled at many sports, but he never played fair. Doing anything possible to win, he was eventually banned from playing any sport at a professional level, which for some reason led him to a life of crime. I don't know why. After a run-in with the Green Lantern, he supposedly dies, but it's revealed that he actually just faked his death, and that's when he became the Sportsmaster. After little success as a solo villain, Croc decided to join the Injustice Society, but after a series of crimes, he ends up in jail for a while. After serving his time, he teamed up with the Huntress and actually ended up marrying her, has a daughter, and then the three of them committed crimes together as one big happy crime family. Croc does eventually lose his life at the hands of the Human Flame following the events of Final Crisis though. With basically no superpowers other than being pretty good at sports, it's no wonder this villain has been forgotten in time. Check him out in his first appearance, All-American Comics number 85. Number 9, the Eraser. Probably the villain with the most interesting attire on this list today, Leonard Fiasco actually went to high school alongside Bruce Wayne. Due to his low grades, he actually ended up dropping out of school and turned to a life of crime as the villain Eraser. He apparently chose that name as a reminder of his constant failures during his school life, and also because he wanted to provide a special service to the criminals of Gotham City. Donning an Eraser helmet that looks exactly like the top of a pencil, and alongside his signature yellow suit, he has been seen throughout the years erasing every trace of evidence left at any crime scene, making it impossible for the police to find any clues, and he does such a good job of it that he manages to stump Batman and Robin from time to time. He is eventually caught by the dynamic duo though after they infiltrate his hideout, and not much has been seen of him since. If you're interested in his story, check him out in his first appearance in 1966, Batman number 188. Number 8, Condiment King. Now with a name like Mitchell Mayo, it makes sense that this villain's name would be the Condiment King. Once an inmate of Arkham Asylum, Mayo somehow managed to break out but was immediately subdued by Batman and Catwoman. His dream was to one day open a restaurant on Coney Island, and he actually does achieve that, stating he's turned legit and wants nothing more than to leave his life of crime behind. However, he does later don his suit once more and does his best to wreak havoc against Batman and Nightwing. Possessing no powers whatsoever, Mayo relies heavily on his gadgets, the most prominent being his condiment guns. These guns shoot a variety of sauces including ketchup, barbecue sauce, mustard, and more. However, it's kinda useless because it doesn't shoot anything at a high enough pressure to be lethal. The best it can do is create a nasty stain and just ruin your day. Check out this villain for yourself in his first appearance in Birds of Prey Volume 1 number 37, or in his New 52 reintroduction in 2016's Batman Volume 3 number 9. Number 7, we have Johnny Karaoke. The crooning Yakuza loan shark is the next on our list today. Definitely not the most fearsome of Batman foes, however, this villain is way too interesting to stay buried for too long. After all, you've got to respect any American fearsome enough to rise through the ranks of the Yakuza. Although he seems like a very happy-go-lucky kind of guy, this is all an act because once you let your guard down around him, he'll whip out his cane that doubles as a microphone and a sword and do whatever he feels is necessary to protect himself and his geisha girls. Though he hasn't really made any appearances outside of his first appearance in 2007's Batman number 660, the character Jonathan John Charisma Brown from Batman Arkham Knight is heavily influenced by him and likely an homage to the smooth-talking Elvis impersonator. Like many lesser-known Batman villains, Johnny does not possess any powers other than the ability to sing pretty well, but his connection to the Yakuza combined with his own skills makes him a fairly dangerous foe. Number 6, Flamingo. Edward Flamingo, known professionally as the Assassin Flamingo, is truly ruthless, and I'm genuinely surprised he hasn't appeared in the media more. As an emotionless, unfeeling killer with the odd tendency to eat his victims' faces after he's killed them, Flamingo has proven to be a formidable foe as he is able to temporarily paralyze Damian Wayne, and would have killed him if it lasted longer, showing that he has no problem killing anyone whatsoever. He even nearly killed the Red Hood and would have gotten away with it if it weren't for the intervention of Dick Grayson, who had recently taken up the mantle of Batman after Bruce Wayne's death. As a master assassin, Flamingo has the know-how to use pretty much every firearm imaginable, and thanks to his iconic pink motorcycle, he is rarely caught. Described as an evil Zorro by his creator Grant Morrison, why not check him out for yourself in 2007's Batman number 666. Number 5, Maxi Zeus. Chronologically the fourth Batman villain to be committed to Arkham Asylum behind the Joker, Two-Face, and Rupert Thorne, Maximilian started out with pretty humble beginnings as a Greek history teacher. After his wife dies from unrevealed circumstances, Zeus loses his sanity and becomes a crime lord, using his intelligence and resources to rise to power in Gotham's underworld. Upon his very first murder though, he is thwarted by Batman and committed to Arkham Asylum, where he escaped from many times, one of which Batman actually let slide, as it was so he could go wish his daughter happy birthday. With each escape leading him to lose more and more of his sanity, Zeus eventually gets to a point where he joins forces with the children of Ares, Deimos, Phobos, and Eris, to help merge Gotham City with Ares' throne capital, the Areopagus. Maxie is actually killed as a result of this whole plot, and his sacrifice is what brings the return of Ares, who is thankfully stopped by Wonder Woman. Funnily enough, it's actually revealed about a year later that Maxie is alive and well and running an illegal casino that eventually gets shut down thanks to a tip from the boy Wonder, and Maxie is sent back to jail without any struggle. You've probably guessed it, but this guy doesn't have any powers either. Basically, his knowledge as a history teacher and his ability to lead got him as far as possible, which is pretty impressive if you ask me. Check him out in his first appearance in 1979's Detective Comics number 483. Number 4. Dollhouse. As the daughter of Barton Mathis, known best as the Dollmaker, Matilda Mathis commits crimes and operates under the name Dollhouse. From a young age, she was taught how to hunt and slaughter people and usually wore a doll face that was grafted over her own when committing these crimes. Forced to go into hiding after her father's business starts to go wrong after he kidnaps Batman, she is the only one of his children to actually end up resurfacing and to carry on the family business later on. Dollhouse picks up right where her father left off, taking Gotham's more misfortunate citizens and making money off of their organs through the black market. Like Dollmaker, Matilda turns the bodies into dolls, of which she actually keeps more than a few for her own dollhouse. Making her first appearance in 2011's Detective Comics Volume 2, Number 2, check out her twisted upbringing for yourself and let me know in the comments below what you think. Number 3. The Ventriloquist. Since his debut in Detective Comics number 583, 3 versions of the Ventriloquist have perplexed audiences. These versions being Arnold Wesker, Peyton Riley, and New 52's Shauna Belzer, but let's focus on Wesker as he is the best known of the 3. Because of his multiple personality disorder, Wesker uses a ventriloquist dummy to commit mob-related crimes. This doll, famously named Scarface for his Al Capone-like appearance, controls Wesker and the crime business they run. If Scarface isn't present, then Wesker projects an identity onto another inanimate object, usually sock puppets or anything else that he can use as a puppet. First appearing in 1988's Detective Comics number 583, we've seen Wesker as a member of the Secret Society of Supervillains, the Black Lantern Corps, and even the Justice League of Arkham, with all the stories and battles leading up to his tragic death in 2006's Detective Comics number 818. A year after surviving Luthor's attempt to recreate the multiverse, we see the Great White Shark burst into Wesker's apartment and kill him with a single shot to the head. Man, it's such a sad way to go for such a good villain. Number 2. Professor Pig. Laszlo Valentine, aka Professor Pig, and that's P-Y-G not P-I-G, was a former agent of Spiral driven mad by his own mind-eroding drugs, and he was an enemy of Dick Grayson and Damian Wayne during their time as Batman and Robin. Characterized as a schizophrenic, Pig's mental illness explains many of his habits, one of the most prominent being his desire to make everything perfect. Now, how does he go about accomplishing this task? Well, by unleashing Dollatrons and mind-altering substances onto Gotham City. The Dollatrons are at the center of Professor Pig's story depravity, being brainwashed people who followed his every command as though they were robots. And though they act as his loyal minions, the Dollatrons are actually very much expendable and have been replaced many, many times. Despite his mental illness, Valentine is still a formidable foe with a mastery of basic hand-to-hand combat and a high-level proficiency with a knife, since they were once an incredible surgeon able to perform complicated surgeries, once actually switching a hand with a foot. Making their first appearance alongside Flamingo in 2007's Batman number 666, check out their origin story for yourself or read their New 52 introduction in Batman Volume 2 number 1. And finally, number 1, the Phantasm. Created for the DC animated movie Batman Mask of the Phantasm, Andrea Beaumont treads that line between good and evil as the vigilante, the Phantasm. Her and Bruce were university sweethearts and actually had plans to get married one day. However, her father was a rich businessman who got involved with the wrong kind of people and ended up having to go into hiding, and eventually all that got him killed. This drove Andrea to take revenge on all those who were a member of the criminal gang who killed her father, especially Jack Napier, who ended up becoming the Clown Prince of Crime. To take her revenge on Chucky Soul, Buzz Bronski, and Sal Valestra, she dons the mantle of the Phantasm, a figure that kind of resembles the Grim Reaper, complete with a scythe that she wears over her right hand. Using her father's money to hone her skills, she returns to Gotham years later to complete her goal of killing all the mob bosses. However, she does not get the chance to kill the Joker as Batman ends up intervening. Years later, she does kind of redeem herself by not killing Terry McGinnis' parents after being hired to, but after causing so much bloodshed, I really think she's more on the evil side of things. If you want to see her story for yourself, check out Batman Mask of the Phantasm and let me know what you think.
Number 10. James Gordon Jr., also known as X-Strike. James Gordon Jr. is a sociopath who in the New Earth continuity believed that empathy made you weak and set out to prove as much to Batman. While he is just a sociopathic murderer who enjoys hurting other people, James also happens to have a genius level intellect, which is obviously a pretty deadly combination. In the story Black Black Mirror, he set out to administer medication he had made to infants which increases psychotic tendencies, a medication he himself was using, supplementing the meds that would have helped to subdue those tendencies and calm those instincts within him. It took a while before the Bat family or the Gordons managed to figure out that something was not right when James returned. Although at least his dad, Commissioner Jim Gordon, had instincts that something was pretty much up right away and decided to follow those, which ultimately allowed James's plot to be uncovered and for him to be apprehended in the end. In the Prime Earth continuity, he was part of the Suicide Squad and was known for being their analyst. James also seems to be one of those villains who dies in stories but then always somehow comes back. I feel like he's done that at least a couple times, so although he's dead right now, he'll probably come back at some point. If I was writing, I'd bring him back. I like James Gordon Jr. Number 9. Holiday. Holiday has to be one of the most unexpected villains in Batman and Gotham's rogue gallery, and an accomplished unexpected villain at that. Holiday was a serial killer who seemed to be targeting the criminal mob family known as the Falcones with his targets. However, then the Maroni family was also targeted, another massive crime family in Gotham. This created a lot of tension between Sal Maroni and Carmine Falcone, the head of both families respectively. However, in the end, Holiday wiped out not just many of the people and members of the Falcones, but also killed various members of the Maroni family as well, with the killings taking place on holidays. In the end, Batman and Jim Gordon managed to apprehend Holiday, but only after he had successfully killed Sal Maroni on Labor Day. Holiday turned out to be the youngest son of Carmine Falcone, Alberto, who wanted to prove himself and get revenge for being excluded from the family business. Although in reality, this was pretty much done to protect him. Wow, that's unfortunate. Holiday would later face off with Calendar Man, and after being wounded would be smothered to death by his sister. Tragic. Number 8. Calendar Man. Well, of course I gotta put Calendar Man above since he beat Holiday, and that's how it goes. For a guy that pulls off crimes inspired by different holidays, seasons, and calendar dates, Calendar Man can actually be surprisingly successful and terrifying. In his first encounter with Batman, Calendar Man managed to pull off 4 crimes successfully before he was caught. Aside from that, over the years, Calendar Man in the comics has taken his crimes to the next level, even going so far as to murder families as part of a Thanksgiving Day crime spree, sitting down to steal a plate of dinner after successfully wiping out an entire targeted family. That is pretty dark. Of course, Calendar Man's weakness tends to be similar to Riddler's, namely that he leaves clues as to how to capture him often, and we always know his crimes will revolve around notable days in the calendar, so makes it pretty easy to watch out for him. Like, is a holiday coming up? Well, we should probably watch out for Calendar Man. Number 7. Owlman. Pretty much everything about Owlman from Earth 3's crime syndicate is unexpected. He's the evil counterpart to Batman, but is not Earth 3's version of Bruce. Instead, he is Thomas Wayne Jr., who on his Earth was Bruce's older brother. He himself plotted to kill his parents as he believed they were mismanaging their wealth, which would of course end up being his inheritance. In the end, Bruce refused to help Thomas and even attempted to convince him to halt his plot. So Thomas Jr., saddened, was forced to kill his brother, having had much higher hopes for young Bruce. Thomas would then become Owlman and use a combination of fear, wealth, and influence to take control of Gotham. Still missing his brother, he decided to find someone to fill that hole in his heart. After meeting Dick Grayson at the circus, Thomas orchestrated the death of his parents in secret and then offered him support and a home, manipulating him into becoming his sidekick, Talon. Yeah, pretty shocking stuff. Number 6. Hush. Hush has managed to pull off some of the most horrific schemes over the years and gotten under Batman's skin many times, and Catwoman's skin even, when he literally stole her heart. Thomas Elliot is not only a powerful villain because of his intense vendetta against the Wayne family and Batman, but because he also is often shown to have the skill and strength to match Batman, as well as the cunning. He has taken Batman in hand-to-hand combat and fared surprisingly well, and he's managed to set into motion outlandish plots like impersonating Bruce Wayne by giving himself plastic surgery to make himself look nearly identical, then capturing and threatening the real Bruce Wayne with murder and disfigurement so that he could ultimately take his place. Number 5. Darkseid. I know what you're thinking, but Amanda, none of us are surprised that Darkseid is super powerful. It's, you know, kinda his thing. I know Darkseid is super powerful. But remember earlier on when I said that some villains are simply surprising because they happen to go toe to toe with Batman at all? Well, Darkseid is one of those villains. Because he's just so powerful, it makes little sense that Batman would even be able to face him. I'm not knocking Batman here, by the way, just acknowledging that he, at the end of the day, is just a very well trained, skilled, rich man in a bat suit. So yeah. And yet he has also managed to defeat Darkseid on more than one occasion, which is only even more unexpected and surprising. But I guess it's these unexpected storylines that we find so exhilarating and help to sell comics. So when it comes down to why they were written, it actually makes a lot of sense. It's the unexpected matches that are the stories people get excited to write and fans get excited to read. Number 4. Harley Quinn. Harley is just unexpected because of, well, I mean, where she started from in the Batverse. She was introduced in the Batman animated series as Joker's sidekick and girlfriend, and she became such a fan favorite that she was made a regular there even though she was kind of intended to be a one-off character, and would eventually make her way into the comics as well. From there, Harley's popularity meant we'd see her win all kinds of victories, or at least almost win them, and in the animated series she'd also prove how dangerous she was when she came up with some of the most potentially successful schemes, which of course often irritated her partner in crime and her partner in life, Mr. J. Over the years, Harley has become so successful and powerful in fact that she has moved more and more away from being a villain and more towards heroic acts, with her now even becoming one of Batman's sidekicks in the comics. For a human, Harley is also shown being very strong, flexible, and durable in addition to being brilliant, often using her intellect or her unpredictable craziness to outsmart many of her opponents. Let's just remember that at one point she took on Wonder Woman, Batman, and Superman all at once and was actually successful in that encounter. Number 3. Poison Ivy. I mean, we all know how powerful Ivy is at this point, but it should also be acknowledged that initially she was just a student studying to be a botanist who ended up being used in her teacher's/lover's twisted experiment. She then became something new, something deadly, the villain and creature we'd come to know as Poison Ivy. Ivy was initially shown to be immune to all poisons and was interested in crime for basically the sake of status and power, able to use pheromones and kisses to influence her enemies. The power of seduction. I don't know what this is. This is seduction, apparently. Since then, Ivy has come a long way at one point, even taking control of the whole world, controlling everyone's minds through plant life that they had consumed. She also became a full-on terrifying eco-terrorist, and since the very real and also fictional world of eco-horror continues to grow, so does Ivy's power and presence in the comics, especially now that she's returned to her more traditional, villainous ways. Which is also kind of unexpected, because she was down this hero path and then they were like, she's a villain again. I was like, huh? Alright. Number 2. Karma. Just because you are considered a low-level thug, or in Fleet Delmar's case a supposed freedom fighter, doesn't mean you can't rise above your rank and become something greater. That is just what Fleet did. He ended up getting his hands on some alien tech that allowed him to move up to the next level when it came to his rank as a threatening and powerful Batman villain. He was supposedly apprehended by Batman years before, who had tormented him with fear gas as punishment for his crimes. It's pretty harsh, really. This experience apparently led to him losing his eyes and becoming blind, which is why he decided to seize the alien tech and use it to get revenge. The helmet he wore granted him psychic powers, allowing him to read the minds of his opponent and counteract their attacks easily in a fight. The helmet also allowed him to absorb energy blasts, which at one point allowed Karma to take on both Black Lightning and Batman at the same time. And then he went on to have a semi-successful career with the League of Assassins, so I mean he died, but still, pretty crazy for just like a low-level thug in my opinion. Number 1. Phantasm. Phantasm is of course unexpected given that she had a secret identity, and in the animated series we even expected her to be a he instead of a she, so that's pretty unexpected. Andrea Beaumont is also one of those very powerful and strong villains for the fact that she holds a lot of sway over Bruce Wayne, being one of his love interests as well. Not only that, but when it comes to many of her skills and her physical prowess, she is often shown to match Batman and be on a very similar level to him, which is of course quite quite impressive, because Batman is pretty crazy. Andrea is also surprisingly more ruthless in comparison to Bruce, having no qualms with killing those who cross her, whereas Bruce typically holds back from killing, at least in the current continuity. In his original days, not so much. So not only does she potentially have him as an ally at times, but she also has all the skill, strength, and know-how to use their relationship and her knowledge of Bruce to her advantage when playing the role of antagonist.